Today on Tricrow Studios, we do a high gain amp shootout between the Marshall JCM 2000 TSL 100 and the Peavey XXX. So at this point in the video, I'd like to kind of reiterate here that this is a high gain amp shootout. That's why it's titled so. So you're not going to hear any cleans, you're not going to hear any breakup or anything like that. I could do that in a different video. But this is just high gain geared towards metal. I also like to note that I did make the decision to boost both of these amps. You don't generally do that with either of these. They don't require it. They work perfectly fine without a boost. Just when I was A/B'ing the recording, I was getting a little more energy from the TS9 boosting. But I do have two sound samples for you today, the first of which is a somewhat balanced EQ setting in drop C, second of which is a more scoop type setting in drop B. By the way, the XXX, both are on the crunch channel. Alright, so there you go. There are the two sound samples for the high gain amp shootout between the Marshall JCM 2000 TSL 100 and the Peavey XXX, which I think you call this XXX version 1, because version 2 is just like a retooled JSX, right? So to this point in the video where I kind of like to go over what I've gained from doing a shootout like this. Now I already know what I'm going to get in the comments because we're talking about a XXX here, so your XXX sounds better than mine. It works better on the tight setting, even though I have it on the loose setting, which with a XXX, the tight setting, that's really taking a lot of resonance out of the amp. So a lot of the low end and the low mids kind of don't work as well, which doesn't really work for me. And then the third of which is, why are you boosting? You don't need to boost either of these amps. So as I said at the top of the video there, whenever I do a shootout like this, I usually A-B, so I do it with a boost, without a boost, for both amps, and just see which one has a little more energy or a little more sound of which I'm going for. So all comments aside, what I gained from doing a shootout like this, and it is kind of what I thought I would get. The TSL doesn't really have really sweet high mids to it. Sometimes they can be described as the mids being a little hollow. The gain on the lead channel can kind of accentuate some of the low mids as well, rather than what you would get a lot of times with the XXX, which the gain would kind of accentuate that high mid, especially on the Ultra channel, which I did not use because not the greatest with a boost, and sometimes can just sound a little fuzzy on its own. But the Ultra channel, a lot of the times, has a little more accentuation to the treble, like the high end, rather than the mids or the high mids. So I kind of thought I would hear that. So a little bit almost hollow sounding mids, and a little bit more consistency across the board for the EQ, with the gain kind of accentuating the high mid kind of area. I do feel that the XXX worked a little better in the somewhat balanced setting, whereas if you're a little bit on the scooped side, I just felt that the TSL worked a little better. Of course, I mean, I could have kind of skewed some of the EQ a little bit more, but I wanted to keep it really balanced here. But I could have added a little more high end to the TSL to kind of offset some of that loss of the high end mid. Doesn't always work, but sometimes it really works well. Both of these amps will generally find for a good price on the used market. A lot of the times, however, you do have to wait a couple of weeks. So I'm in Canada. A lot of the times you see both of these amps listed for $1,000. And then if you wait a couple of weeks, because no one's going to buy these at $1,000 a piece, they usually come down in price from there. Almost sometimes, depending on the motivation of the seller, sometimes at like $500 or $600. The JCM 2000 series also, I find, has a bit of a bum rap. I know that some of the earlier versions had some issues with their boards, so there may be some reliability issues with some of the older ones. However, I just find sound-wise, it's totally different than a lot of other Marshalls. The low end here is accentuated a lot more than previous generations of Marshalls, especially since it does have that deep switch going here. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with the JCM 2000 that you couldn't with the 900 Silver Jubilee or the 800. The XXX as well, it is a Peavey product, so I'm going to say what I say in every video where I'm talking about a Peavey amp. If you are looking to purchase one of these on the used market, I do highly recommend that you make sure that you have some screwdrivers, about a half an hour of your time, and some contact cleaner. You can usually get that for $8 or $9. Because what does happen with Peavey amps, every like year and a half or 2 years or whatever, and I know there's going to be some people, I've never had to do that with my Peavey amp, but it's a well-known issue. With the potentiometers and the contacts and everything, they do seem to get dirtier faster than other amps. So that's generally where you're going to get the but a little bit of a crackly sound when you're adjusting things. However, what does happen, especially on the volume and gain tone knobs, potentiometers, brain, they will almost seem like it's cutting out power-wise. So what happens, and it's somewhat starting to happen on my XXX, I have 5 different Peavey amps. The only one that I haven't had to do this on yet so far is my 6505 Plus. But what tends to happen is if you move the volume just a little bit, it crackles and then it cuts out the signal until you move it to a certain other spot. It can actually get so bad, I've had it on the gain control for my JSX, to where it would just randomly cut out if it was in a certain spot. So you'd move it to a certain spot, and you'd be like, that sounds good, and then you'd play, and about 30 seconds later, it would kind of cut out, and then come back in, and cut out, and come back in. Again, half hour, you have to pull the chassis out and use contact cleaner and work that in on all of the potentiometers. Fixes the issue for about 1.5 years, 2 years. But I have spoken enough. I don't want to talk anymore. I didn't plan on making a video today. I came downstairs and I grabbed my Les Paul Traditional, and here we are. Thanks for watching.